I want to just come back. There have been a couple of questions that relate to a macro issue that I'd be interested in getting your perspective on. And we had one about contractors or freelancers, which is, in most companies, the context of that question gets answered by a legal risk management issue around whether they're part of an employee program. But another question about brand and a company that still thinks they control their brand, for instance. But it raised a question with me, which is, there's a disconnect frequently that we perceive between the people that run programs for workplace giving and volunteering and the senior management people that are helping guide the purse strings and the programs and the policy decisions. And there seems to be a gulf, not only generationally, but in terms of a mindset. And how, as people who are involved in programs, how do you move senior management forward in a way that lets them embrace the power of choice, which invites a different risk profile, for instance, to their brand and some of those issues? Can you comment on that?
Well, I'll jump in because I deal with this a lot with some of my clients. And a lot of it is being able to, A, show them examples or case studies where this has worked and been phenomenally successful, right? And then B, when we talk about the new risk portfolio that they have, good sort of risk mitigation plans for them to show them, like, all right, here's how we will mitigate this risk, or here's how what you perceive as a risk is actually an opportunity to grow this even further. I think it really comes down now to how good is your personal or professional relationship with the people who are running that campaign. I think again, you have to find ways to build structures that allow the collaboration between the people who are running the community involvement campaign and the people who are holding the purse strings, so that the policies that are set up within the organization are beneficial to both, right? They have to collaborate a little bit more. Again, I think just as George mentioned, there's almost no magic bullet for that because corporations and companies are so different. Like I can go into, say, a MasterCard and talk to them about employee engagement, and the person who's running, or setting the policy and setting the budget for their community engagement campaign, say, is the person who's in charge of corporate communications. Then I can go into a completely different organization, and the general counsel is running it. So they're like completely different personalities, and people who prioritize different things, right? So I can go to MasterCard and go talk to Andrew Bowens, and he'll be like, "Oh, it's great. We need to give them as much control as they want. Let employees do whatever they want to do, and let's just capture it all. Let's put it all through our social profile so that our brand gets the most for it. Let's empower them as much as we can." And then I go to company C, and there's some general counsel who's like, "Yeah, well, I don't know. Are you sure?" I'm not gonna say that company. Yeah, can we? I don't know. Maybe next year. And that's always the thing that backs down everybody. Oh, next year. So I think that's it depends on, you have to be able to drive it with relationships and be able to completely deal with sort of considering your audience, which came up in another question earlier.
Yeah, if you walk in with this sort of like, here's a one size fits all, you end up with lipstick on a pig, and it just doesn't look good. And a different way of saying it is like, you really need to make sure that it's aligned, because there's a high BS meter with a lot of millennials, and they can understand when it just doesn't fit. And my experience at Do Something, we were given what was called a volunteer sabbatical, and in return, it meant that you had to stay on for a year. So that is directly corollary to retention. And not only that, we did an analysis of what time frame people were most likely to leave, and then offered it right at that time. So that's not an accident. On top of which, when I got to go and work with the largest free paper in Mozambique for a month, that was an experience that I will take with me to like my last breath. That is a deep impact, meaningful experience that I had as a result of working with Do Something, which is why I'm wearing a Do Something jacket when I walk out of here.
I think it's a really interesting question too, and there are increasingly, from a corporate perspective, a lot more rankings these days. You know, the Reputation Institute and BSR and a lot of these rankings of civic, you know, ranking companies for their CSR efforts. And I think as a trend, this is just increasing exponentially. So it used to be, you know, corporate philanthropy, ethics. Now it's, you know, how green are you? It's, you know, are your employees engaged in giving? You know, are you connecting with your customers around social issues? And I know that, although I know there are a lot of really good examples of companies that have managed to protect their reputation in times of crisis and when things do go wrong, because they have a bank of goodwill and, you know, a good reputation as a corporate citizen. So probably in the, you know, the larger perspective, trying to draw some of those examples out of, you know, how a company has managed to survive a crisis when it happens, because they've generated a lot of goodwill with their customers, with their key stakeholders around these social responsibility efforts, and not just, you know, volunteering in communities, but across the board, it's a piece of the pie.